In the middle of the Nevada desert, where the horizon shimmers and warning signs line the dust-choked roads, lies one of the most secretive facilities in American history, Area 51. For decades, the US government denied it even existed. Then in 2013, declassified CIA documents confirmed the base was built in the 1950s to test high-altitude spy planes like the U-2 during the Cold War. But by then, the legend had already taken on a life of its own. Stories of reverse-engineered alien craft, claims of recovered extraterrestrial bodies after Roswell in 1947, former employees hinting at technologies decades ahead of their time, even presidential curiosity names like Dwight D. Eisenhower whispered into conspiracy lore. Is Area 51 simply a testing ground for revolutionary military aircraft? Or did classified experiments blur the line between science fiction and reality? Tonight, we step beyond the barbed wire and into the declassified files, the rumors, and the enduring mystery of alleged alien experiments at Area 51. Somewhere in the vast emptiness of the Nevada desert, about 83 miles northwest of Las Vegas, there is a place that does not appear on any public map. There are no signs welcoming you. There are no tourist centers. What there are, instead, are motion sensors buried in the dirt. Armed guards in unmarked vehicles watching from ridgelines. Locals call them the Cammo Dudes because of their desert camouflage and dark sunglasses, and signs that read in cold, unambiguous language, "Use of deadly force authorized." The nearest civilian settlement is Rachel, Nevada, a town so small it barely registers as a dot on a map, with a population that has hovered around 50 people for years. Its only notable landmark is the Little Arlean, a bar and motel that leans fully into the alien mythology, serving burgers under portraits of grey-skinned extraterrestrials. To reach it, you drive along Nevada State Route 375, which the state government officially renamed the Extraterrestrial Highway in 1996, complete with a commemorative road sign that has been stolen by souvenir hunters so many times, the state stopped replacing it for a while. For decades, UFO enthusiasts gathered at a black mailbox along this highway owned by a rancher named Steve Medlin, who had nothing to do with any of it, believing it marked a prime viewing spot for mysterious lights over Groom Lake. This is Area 51, and for more than 7 decades, it has been the most secretive military installation on American soil, a place so deliberately hidden from the world that its very existence was not officially acknowledged by the United States government until 2013, when the CIA finally declassified documents in response to a Freedom of Information Act request filed by George Washington University's National Security Archive. The base was real. It had always been real. But the question that has haunted the American imagination since the 1950s was never really about whether the base existed. The question was always about what was happening inside. The official story is straightforward enough. Area 51 was established in 1955 as a testing site for the Lockheed U-2 spy plane, a high-altitude reconnaissance aircraft designed to fly over the Soviet Union and photograph military installations during the most dangerous years of the Cold War. The name Area 51 itself is believed to derive from designations on old Atomic Energy Commission maps, which divided the Nevada test site into numbered grid sections. Area 51 simply being one of them, though it was technically not part of the test site. The location was chosen by legendary Lockheed engineer Clarence Kelly Johnson and CIA officer Richard Bissell, who flew over the desert in a small plane, searching for a place remote enough to hide their work. When they spotted the dry lakebed at Groom Lake, surrounded by mountains and already adjacent to the restricted airspace of the nuclear testing grounds, they knew they had found it. Lockheed test pilot Tony LeVere made the first U-2 flight from the site in August 1955, launching what would become one of the most consequential intelligence programs in American history. The U-2 program was followed by the A-12 Oxcart, a titanium-bodied aircraft capable of flying at speeds exceeding Mach 3 at altitudes above 85,000 feet. Developed as part of the CIA's obsessive drive to stay one step ahead of Soviet air defenses. The A-12 was so fast that the friction of air against its fuselage heated the surface to over 500 degrees Fahrenheit during flight, requiring entirely new materials and engineering methods. These were real programs, with real engineers, real budgets, and real results. Workers were flown in daily on unmarked Boeing 737 sets, operated by a contract airline known internally as Janet Airlines, a name that some have speculated stands for just another non-existent terminal, though this has never been confirmed. The flights departed from a restricted terminal at Las Vegas's McCarran International Airport, accessible through a guarded gate with no public signage. The planes were white, with a single red stripe and no logos. At its peak, Janet Airlines reportedly operated dozens of daily flights, carrying thousands of employees to the base each week. Those employees were forbidden from discussing where they worked, what they did, or even which direction the plane flew. As Annie Jacobson, the investigative journalist who wrote the 2011 book Area 51, an uncensored history of America's top-secret military base, noted after interviewing dozens of former base workers. Many of them carried their secrets to the grave, some never telling even their spouses what they had done during their careers. Everything about Area 51 was designed to be invisible. And that invisibility, that suffocating blanket of secrecy, is precisely what gave birth to one of the most enduring conspiracy theories in modern history. When the CIA declassified hundreds of pages of documents related to the U-2 program and other Cold War aviation projects, something remarkable became clear. During the 1950s and 1960s, a significant number of UFO sightings reported by commercial airline pilots and civilians on the ground coincided almost exactly with U-2 and Oxcart test flights. According to the CIA's own internal analysis, more than half of all UFO reports during the late 1950s and 1960s could be attributed to high-altitude reconnaissance flights. These aircraft flew at altitudes above 60,000 feet, far higher than anything known to the public at the time. Commercial pilots in the 1950s typically cruised at around 10,000 to 20,000 feet, and the idea that a man-made object could operate at 3 times that altitude was simply beyond what most people believed possible. When the sun had already set at ground level, but still reflected off the silver body of a U-2 cruising in the upper atmosphere, the result was a bright, glowing object moving silently across the sky in ways that seemed to defy known aviation. Captain Edward J. Ruppelt, the Air Force officer who led Project Blue Book in its early years, and who is credited with coining the term unidentified flying object, wrote in his 1956 book, The Report on Unidentified Flying Objects, that the Air Force was receiving dozens of sighting reports each week, many from credible observers, pilots, air traffic controllers, military personnel whose descriptions matched no known aircraft. People saw something they could not explain, and they reached for the only explanation that felt big enough: extraterrestrials. The Air Force knew the truth. The CIA knew the truth. But they could not correct the record without revealing the existence of their most classified spy programs. So they said nothing. They let the alien stories grow. In some cases, according to declassified records, they may have even encouraged the confusion because a public obsessed with flying saucers was far less dangerous than a public asking questions about secret surveillance aircraft. As former CIA Director Roscoe Hillenkoetter once observed in a rare public statement to Congress in 1960, behind the scenes, high-ranking Air Force officers are soberly concerned about the UFOs. But through official secrecy and ridicule, many citizens are led to believe the unknown flying objects are nonsense. The mythology of Area 51 was not an accident. It was, at least in part, a useful byproduct of national security. But here is where the story fractures, where the clean line between fact and fiction begins to blur. Because the declassified documents as revealing as they were, only told part of the story. They confirmed aircraft programs. They confirmed test flights. They confirmed the existence of the base. What they did not confirm, and what they conspicuously avoided, was anything related to the most persistent and disturbing allegation of all, that Area 51 was used not just to test human technology, but to study something that was not human at all. As Senator Barry Goldwater, a powerful political figure and brigadier general in the Air Force Reserve, once told researcher Larry King in a 1994 interview, he had personally asked his friend General Curtis LeMay, the head of the Strategic Air Command, for access to a room at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base rumored to contain UFO-related material. "He just gave me holy hell," Goldwater recalled. He said, "Not only can't you get into it, but don't you ever mention it to me again." If the secret was simply about airplanes, people asked, why the fury? Why the fear? The thread begins in Roswell, New Mexico, in the summer of 1947, 8 years before Area 51 was officially established. In early July of that year, a rancher named William Mack Brazel found unusual debris scattered across his property northwest of Roswell, metallic fragments, strange foil-like material that reportedly returned to its original shape after being crumpled, and lightweight sticks resembling balsa wood but seemingly indestructible. Brazel reported the wreckage to the local sheriff, George Wilcox, who in turn contacted Roswell Army Airfield. Major Jesse Marcel, the base's intelligence officer, was dispatched to examine the site. What happened next became the spark that ignited decades of debate. On the 8th of July 1947, the Roswell Army Airfield issued a press release authorized by Base Commander Colonel William Butch Blanchard, stating that they had recovered a flying disc. The headline ran in the Roswell Daily Record that afternoon: "RAF captures flying saucer on ranch in Roswell region." It was one of the most extraordinary military press releases in American history, and it lasted barely 24 hours. The next day, Brigadier General Roger Ramey held a press conference at Fort Worth Army Airfield in Texas, displaying pieces of a weather balloon and a radar reflector, and declared that the original report had been a mistake. The flying disc was nothing more than a downed weather balloon. Major Marcel, who had initially told reporters the debris was unlike anything he had ever seen, was photographed smiling awkwardly beside the balloon wreckage, though he would later tell researchers that the material in the photographs was not the same material he had collected from the ranch. For 30 years, the story essentially disappeared from public consciousness. It was not until 1978, when nuclear physicist and UFO researcher Stanton Friedman tracked down Jesse Marcel in retirement and heard his account firsthand, that the Roswell incident was resurrected. Marcel told Friedman that the weather balloon explanation had been a cover story and that the real debris was something he could not identify. Decades later, the Air Force offered a more detailed explanation. The wreckage came from Project Mogul, a classified program that used high-altitude balloons with sensitive acoustic sensors to monitor Soviet nuclear tests. A 1994 investigation by the General Accounting Office, requested by New Mexico Congressman Stephen Schiff, found that key administrative records from Roswell Army Airfield covering the period of the crash had been destroyed with no explanation of when or why. The case was closed, officially. But for millions of people, it never closed at all. Theories persisted that the crash had involved an extraterrestrial craft and that bodies, small non-human bodies, had been recovered and transported to a secure facility for examination. Glenn Dennis, a mortician working at the Ballard Funeral Home in Roswell, claimed that he received calls from the base asking about small, hermetically sealed caskets and the best methods for preserving tissue that had been exposed to the elements. The destination for whatever was recovered, according to those who believed, was Area 51. No figure in the history of Area 51 conspiracy lore is more polarizing than Bob Lazar. In November 1989, Lazar appeared in a televised interview with Las Vegas investigative journalist George Knapp on KLAS TV and made a series of extraordinary claims that would fundamentally reshape the UFO conversation. Lazar had initially been introduced to the UFO community by John Lear, a retired airline pilot and son of Learjet inventor Bill Lear, who was himself a prominent figure in conspiracy circles. In the interview, Lazar said he had been employed at a facility called S4, located near Papoose Lake, approximately 10 miles south of Groom Lake. He described a complex built into the base of a mountain, camouflaged so effectively that it was virtually invisible from the air, where he alleged the US government was reverse engineering alien spacecraft. Lazar spoke in detail about propulsion systems powered by element 115, a super-heavy element that he claimed could generate its own gravitational field through a reaction that produced antimatter when bombarded with protons, allowing the craft to bend space-time and travel vast distances. At the time of his claims, element 115 had not been synthesized or observed by any laboratory on Earth. Then, in 2003, a team of Russian and American scientists at the Joint Institute for Nuclear Research in Dubna, Russia, successfully created element 115, later named moscovium. Believers pointed to this as vindication. How could Lazar have known about an element that wouldn't be confirmed for another 14 years unless he had seen it firsthand? Skeptics countered that the existence of super-heavy elements had been theoretically predicted for decades, and that Lazar's specific claims about element 115's properties did not match the actual behavior of moscovium, which decays in fractions of a second. Lazar also described hand-scanning security devices used to access restricted areas of S4, a detail that seemed outlandish in 1989, but became far less so as biometric security technology advanced in subsequent decades. He described seeing 9 disc-shaped craft stored inside hangar-like bays carved into the mountainside, each of different design, as though they had come from different sources or different time periods. His story was vivid, technical, and delivered with a calm confidence that many found convincing. Then the scrutiny began. Investigators, including journalist and skeptic Stanton Friedman, ironically, the same man who had revived the Roswell case, could find no records of Lazar having attended MIT or Caltech, as he claimed. His academic history appeared to have been erased or, as skeptics argued, had never existed. The only verifiable record of Lazar's education was a course at Pierce Junior College in Los Angeles and an electronics course at a community college. Supporters saw the absence of records as proof that the government had scrubbed his identity to discredit him, noting that his name did appear in a Los Alamos National Laboratory phone directory, confirming he had at least some connection to classified government work. Critics saw it as proof that he was lying. The tension escalated again in November 2017, when FBI agents raided Lazar's scientific supply business in Michigan, reportedly searching for records related to element 115 and potentially hazardous materials. The raid was never fully explained publicly, and Lazar himself, who appeared in Jeremy Corbell's 2018 documentary Bob Lazar, Area 51 and Flying Saucers, pointed to it as evidence that the government was still watching him, still trying to recover what he knew nearly 3 decades after he first went public. To this day, Bob Lazar remains at the center of the debate, a man who is either one of the most important whistleblowers in history or one of the most elaborate fabricators. As Lazar himself once said with characteristic understatement, "I'm not out there to convince anybody of anything. I just told my story." Then there was the footage. In 1995, a London-based entrepreneur and filmmaker named Ray Santilli released what he claimed was authentic military film showing the autopsy of an alien body recovered from the Roswell crash. Santilli said he had obtained the footage from a retired US military cameraman, whose identity he refused to disclose. The grainy black and white footage showed figures in hazmat suits cutting into a humanoid body with an enlarged head, 6 fingers on each hand, and dark, oversized eyes, while removing internal organs that looked nothing like human anatomy. The film was first screened at the Museum of London before a select audience and then broadcast internationally. Fox Television aired it in the United States as a special titled Alien Autopsy, Fact or Fiction, hosted by Jonathan Frakes, best known for playing Commander Riker on Star Trek, and it drew more than 11 million viewers. The footage was broadcast in over 30 countries. Debates erupted on every news network. Kodak was asked to date the film stock, and while the company confirmed the type of film was consistent with 1940s manufacturing, they could not verify when the actual footage had been shot. Filmmaker Spyros Milaris later claimed he had been hired by Santilli to create the entire autopsy sequence, describing in detail how the alien body was constructed from casts filled with sheep brains, chicken entrails, and raspberry jam. Then, in 2006, Santilli himself admitted that the footage was largely staged, a reconstruction, he called it, based on what he claimed was deteriorated, the original film that had become unusable after years of improper storage. He insisted that a few frames of the real footage were embedded in the recreation, though he never provided proof and could never identify which frames were supposedly genuine. The admission should have ended the story. It didn't. For many, the alien autopsy footage became just another example of the truth being revealed and then snatched away. Another thread in a pattern of disclosure followed immediately by denial. Another door opened, only to be slammed shut. The allegations only grow darker from there. Over the decades, a constellation of claims has emerged from anonymous sources, self-described insiders, and UFO researchers, painting a picture of Area 51 that goes far beyond aircraft testing. These allegations include biological analysis of alien tissue recovered from crash sites, genetic hybridization experiments combining human and extraterrestrial DNA, attempts at telepathic communication with living alien beings, the development of energy weapons based on alien technology, and the reverse engineering of propulsion systems that operate outside known physics. Some accounts describe vast underground laboratories stretching beneath the desert floor, connected by tunnels and elevators, where alien bodies are stored in cryogenic chambers at temperatures near absolute zero. Colonel Philip J. Corso, a former Army intelligence officer who served on President Eisenhower's National Security Council, published a book in 1997 titled The Day After Roswell, in which he claimed that he had personally overseen the distribution of recovered alien technology to American defense contractors, seeding advances in fiber optics, integrated circuits, night vision, and Kevlar. Corso's account was extraordinary, a decorated military officer going on the record with names, dates, and institutional details, and it was either a courageous act of disclosure or a deeply irresponsible fabrication, depending on whom you asked. Others spoke of agreements, treaties, even between the US government and alien civilizations, granting access to advanced technology in exchange for permission to conduct biological studies on human subjects, with abductions serving as a covert data collection program conducted under extraterrestrial authority. None of these claims have been verified. No declassified document has ever confirmed the presence of extraterrestrial biological material at Area 51 or anywhere else. Yet the allegations persist, fueled by the very secrecy that the government itself created. As the late astronaut Gordon Cooper, one of the original Mercury 7, wrote in his 2000 autobiography, Leap of Faith, "I believe that these extraterrestrial vehicles and their crews are visiting this planet from other planets." Most astronauts were reluctant to discuss UFOs. When an American hero who had orbited the Earth speaks those words, dismissal becomes harder. What makes the conversation impossible to dismiss entirely is the fact that the US government has, in recent years, taken the subject of unidentified aerial phenomena far more seriously than ever before. In 2017, the existence of the Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program was revealed to the public through reporting by Helene Cooper, Ralph Blumenthal, and Leslie Kean in the New York Times. AATIP had been operating within the Pentagon since 2007, funded with $22 million in black budget money, secured largely through the efforts of Senate Majority Leader Harry Reid of Nevada, who had taken a personal interest in the subject after conversations with his friend Robert Bigelow, the aerospace entrepreneur and founder of Bigelow Aerospace, who had told Reid he was convinced the U.S. government possessed recovered materials of unknown origin. The program's purpose was to investigate reports of encounters between military personnel and unidentified objects. Its former director, Luis Elizondo, a career intelligence officer, resigned in protest in October 2017, writing in his resignation letter to Defense Secretary James Mattis that he believed the issue demanded far more attention and resources than it was receiving, citing excessive secrecy and bureaucratic resistance. Around the same time, the U.S. Navy released 3 now famous videos known by their nicknames FLIR 1, Gimbal, and Go Fast, showing unidentified objects performing maneuvers that appeared to defy the known limits of aerodynamics. The most dramatic encounter, the so-called Tic Tac incident, occurred on the 14th of November, 2004, off the coast of San Diego. Commander David Fravor, an experienced an 18 Super Hornet pilot with over 18 years of service. He was dispatched from the USS Nimitz to investigate radar contacts that the cruiser USS Princeton had been tracking for 2 weeks. Objects that appeared at 80,000 feet, dropped to 20,000 feet in a matter of seconds, and then hovered near the ocean surface. When Fravor arrived at the coordinates, he saw a white, oblong object, roughly 40 feet long, shaped, he said, like a tic-tac breath mint hovering over a disturbance in the water. The object had no wings, no rotors, no visible exhaust, and no control surfaces. When Fravor began to descend toward it, the object mirrored his movements, then accelerated away at a speed he described as beyond anything he had ever witnessed. "It accelerated like nothing I've ever seen," Fravor later told the New York Times. "I was pretty weirded out." The Pentagon officially confirmed that the videos were authentic and that the objects remained unidentified. This was not fringe territory anymore. This was the Department of Defense, on the record, saying, "We don't know what these are." Before AATIP, there was Project Blue Book, the Air Force's earlier and far more public investigation into UFO reports, which ran from 1952 to 1969 and was headquartered at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base in Dayton, Ohio, the same base where Barry Goldwater had been denied access to a mysterious room. Blue Book catalogued over 12,618 sightings and concluded that most could be explained by natural phenomena, aircraft, satellites, or weather balloons. But 701 cases, roughly 6%, were classified as unidentified and never resolved. The project's most significant scientific figure was Dr. J. Allen Hynek, an astronomer from Northwestern University, who was initially hired as a debunker. His job was to provide conventional explanations for UFO reports and help the Air Force put the issue to rest. But over nearly 2 decades of examining cases, Hynek underwent a profound transformation. He became increasingly troubled by cases that resisted explanation, by witnesses whose credibility was beyond question, and by what he perceived as the Air Force's institutional determination to dismiss reports regardless of their merit. After Blue Book was shut down following the controversial Condon Report of 1968, a University of Colorado study led by physicist Edward Condon that recommended ending formal UFO investigations, despite the fact that roughly 30% of the cases it examined remained unexplained. Hynek broke with the establishment entirely. He founded the Center for UFO Studies and became one of the most respected voices in the field. "Ridicule is not part of the scientific method," Hynek famously declared, "and people should not be taught that it is." The project was shut down. The Air Force declared that UFOs posed no threat to national security, and for decades, that was the government's final word. Until it wasn't. The modern era of UFO disclosure has added new and powerful voices to the chorus. Military personnel who once feared ridicule and career destruction have begun testifying publicly, describing encounters with objects that outperformed any known human technology. In June 2023, David Grush, a former intelligence officer who had served on the Pentagon's UAP task force, filed a whistleblower complaint and testified before the House Oversight Committee that the government had been running a secret crash retrieval program for decades and was in possession of non-human biologics recovered from downed craft. Grush, who held top-secret clearances and had served in Afghanistan, was careful and specific in his testimony, stating that he had been told about these programs by individuals he deemed credible within the intelligence community. He claimed he had been retaliated against for attempting to bring this information to Congress through proper channels. Sitting beside him at the hearing were Commander Fravor and former Navy pilot Ryan Graves, who testified about his squadron's near-daily encounters with unidentified objects off the east coast of the United States during 2014 and 2015. Congressional hearings on UAPs, the government's preferred term, unidentified anomalous phenomena, have placed the topic in the halls of power in a way that would have been unthinkable a generation ago. Government officials have carefully acknowledged that there are things in American airspace that cannot be explained by current understanding. They have not said these things are alien. But they have also, pointedly, not said they aren't. The ambiguity feels deliberate. And for those who have followed this story for decades, it raises an unsettling question. Are they preparing us for something? To understand why the alien mythology around Area 51 has proven so resilient, you have to understand the broader context of government secrecy during the Cold War and the verified history of government deception that has nothing to do with aliens at all. The United States and the Soviet Union were locked in a struggle where information itself was a weapon. Disinformation campaigns were routine. The CIA's Operation Mockingbird sought to influence domestic media. The MK-Ultra program conducted illegal mind control experiments on unwitting American citizens using LSD and other techniques, a program so outrageous that when it was finally exposed in the 1970s through the church, committee hearings, it sounded like something from a paranoid thriller. The Tuskegee syphilis study allowed black men to go untreated for decades in the name of research. The government tested nuclear fallout effects on soldiers ordered to march toward mushroom clouds at the Nevada test site, the very same desert that borders Area 51. Entire programs were built on deception, false radar signatures, dummy warheads, fabricated intelligence. The American public was lied to regularly, not as an aberration, but as policy. When a government lies to its people about one thing and is later proven to have done so, it becomes rational, not paranoid, but genuinely rational, to suspect it is lying about other things too. As the historian Richard Dolan, who has written extensively on UFOs and government secrecy, put it, the UFO cover-up is not an isolated phenomenon. It exists within a culture of secrecy that pervades the national security state. The alien narrative at Area 51 may be exactly what skeptics say it is, a misinterpretation of classified but entirely human technology, amplified by decades of secrecy and fed by a culture hungry for mystery. Or the alien narrative may be something else entirely, a cover story, but in reverse. Some researchers have argued that the government has actively promoted the extraterrestrial explanation as a smokescreen to hide advanced aerospace technologies that are terrestrial in origin, but so far beyond public knowledge that their existence alone would reshape global power dynamics. In this reading, the aliens are the distraction, not the secret. Mirage Men, a 2013 documentary, explored this very possibility, revealing how Air Force Special Agent Richard Doty admitted to deliberately feeding disinformation to UFO researchers in the 1980s, driving at least one Albuquerque businessman, Paul Benowitz, to a mental breakdown by convincing him that aliens were operating out of a base near Dulce, New Mexico. Here is what we know with certainty. Area 51 exists. It was used to develop and test some of the most advanced aircraft in history, from the U-2 to the A-12, Oxcart to the F-117 Nighthawk stealth fighter, which flew its first missions from Groom Lake in 1981 and remained classified until 1988. The U.S. The government kept the base secret for decades and actively misled the public about the nature of objects seen in American skies. Programs investigating unidentified aerial phenomena have been funded, operated, and then hidden from public oversight. Military pilots have encountered objects that remain unexplained by any publicly known technology, and they have said so under oath before Congress. Official videos have been released. The stigma around the topic has shifted dramatically from career-ending joke to legitimate national security concern. Here is what we do not know. No government has confirmed the recovery of extraterrestrial biological material. No declassified document describes alien experiments. No verified physical evidence of non-human intelligence has been presented to the public in a manner that can be independently examined. Bob Lazar's claims remain unproven. The Roswell incident has official explanations that, while debated and doubted by many, have never been formally contradicted by publicly available physical proof of an alien craft. David Grush's testimony, while delivered under oath, is based on second-hand accounts that have not been independently corroborated through physical evidence available to the public. The gap between what we know and what we don't know is enormous. And it is in that gap, that vast, silent, carefully guarded space between verified fact and unverified allegation, that the legend of Area 51 lives and breathes. Perhaps Carl Sagan said it best when he observed, "The absence of evidence is not the evidence of absence." The desert keeps its secrets well. The question is whether those secrets belong to this world or to something else entirely. For decades, Area 51 has lived at the crossroads of secrecy and imagination. Declassified documents confirm testing of U-2 spy planes and stealth aircraft, but whispers of alien experiments have never faded. From Cold War test flights in the 1950s to the 2013 CIA acknowledgement of the base's existence, every revelation seemed to answer one question and spark three more. Was it advanced technology mistaken for something extraterrestrial, or did the desert sky hide more than experimental wings? As astronaut Edgar Mitchell once said, "We are not alone in the universe. Maybe the truth is buried in Nevada's sand. Or maybe the mystery is the point." Thank you for watching. Until next time, keep your eyes on the stars and your mind open to the unknown.